Good morning.
Yep, Tom Wilson is here. Just fair warning.
Good morning, Commissioner Wilson. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just great.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I see we also have Commissioner Clark, and they checked you, so good morning.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Meyer, are you with us?
Hear me okay?
There we go. We hear you. Thank you, Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, everybody, it's 9 a.m. and I'll call the commission meeting to order. We have Greg Fries and Marcia are absent. We've got Ken Clark, Ezra Meyer, and Tom Wilson participating virtually. And for everybody that may be listening or will be listening, in person we have myself, Tom Havel, Sarah Estrich, Beth Bookland, and Brad Murphy. So we have a quorum with 2 members absent. So I just want to go through that. Welcome to all of our guests. Janelle, is there any guidance you need to give for those that are virtual?
Always, always. So, commissioners, staff, and the members of the public who may be in attendance, Forbes McIntosh, good morning to everybody. To have a smooth meeting, and while the commission and staff are in person, we're still offering Zoom options, of course, to our guests who may attend. If you're attending virtually and you'd like to speak, you can do so under appearances by the public. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube, and the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be. And finally, for the commissioners and members at the table who are in the room today, to use your mic, please press the green button and make sure that the mic is approximately 3 inches from your face and that you're facing the mic so all those attending virtually can hear you well. With that, those are our decorum rules for today. Welcome, everyone. Let's have a great meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. Michael, any announcements?
Yes, I have one announcement. Governor Evers has proclaimed Thursday, May 22nd as Wastewater Professionals Appreciation Day. We included the proclamation in your agenda packet. Our partners at the State Department of Health Services and State Lab of Hygiene initiated this effort, in part for their appreciation of the contributions of wastewater plants and professionals for surveillance of wastewater. Through the program and contributions such as ours, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention named the Wisconsin Wastewater Surveillance Program a National Center of Excellence for Wastewater Surveillance, one of just 4 centers nationwide. In conjunction with Appreciation Day, we are having a media event at the plant next Thursday, May 22nd, State Health Department and the State Lab. The event will begin at 10 a.m. and it will start with a short speaking program with outdoor weather permitting conditions and be followed by a condensed tour. We are still working out the details. Amanda will send out more information once they are available, and commissioners are welcome to join.
And I will just add one correction. It's actually next Wednesday, not next Thursday, which is still the 22nd, but I wrote the wrong day.
Oh,
So it is next Wednesday.
thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Amanda. And this is what the proclamation looks like. So.
Let's see. That will take us to a welcome to Casey Quick, business. Amanda, you're going to do the introduction?
I am, and I'm going to stand up because it's awkward to introduce Cassie, who's sitting behind me. But Cassie, if you can go ahead and stand up. So I would like to welcome Cassie Quick here to the district. She started with us about 2.5, 3 weeks ago and is just jumping right in. But Cassie comes to us from Minnesota, and we don't blame her for that. She was born and raised in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis and graduated with her bachelor's degree in management from the College of St. Scholastica in Duluth. And she spent most of her career to date in administrative support. And the one thing she told us and included in her bio is that she enjoys helping others make their day run smoothly, and we appreciate that. In her spare time, she enjoys discovering new restaurants. She says she's a self-proclaimed foodie, or connecting with friends over a cup of coffee. She is getting married this summer, which prompted her move to Madison, and she's excited to explore the Madison area and join the team at the district. So Cassie, for commissioners, you will be seeing a lot of her both via email and here in our commission meetings, because the majority of the commission work is moving to Cassie, with Janelle and Lynn moving into backup and redundancy roles. So that'll be a key piece of Cassie's work moving forward. And like I mentioned, she's picked it up quickly. So welcome, first commission meeting into the district.
Do I have any appearances by the public? Any appearances by the public? Forbes is here. Anybody online? Don't hear of any. So we'll move to the consent calendar, where we have the approval of the minutes from the April 25th meeting, approval of cash statement capital, cash statement debt service, and approval, I can't remember, I think there were like 4 sewer treatment plants, or sewer extensions, yeah. So, any questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
It's Wilson. I'll move
Commissioner
approval.
Eskridge. Oh, okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Eskridge, and then we'll take the second by Commissioner Wilson. Is that okay, Tom?
Okay with me.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. That will take us to topics, where we have 4A is the review and approval of the commission per diem. Michael, you want to go through?
I'm really excited to bring this to you. It's been a long time trying to convince the commission to do this. When I started my first year, I brought a per diem, and the commission decided to keep it the same way that it has been since 1999. There hasn't been a change in the per diem. So it's time for a raise. You put in the time, you offer the district important policy guidance, keeps our district moving forward. So the recommendation before you is to approve the resolution increasing the per diem to $125 per meeting, and increasing officer pay to $140 per meeting, including a 3% annual escalator. The way that escalator will work is it'll happen on January 1st, and the first commissioners that will realize the change in the escalator will be those that are either appointed or reappointed following October, when our commissioners' new terms start. That will be the flow of how this will change. I did debate whether we should use the consumer price index as instead, and that's option 2 if you wanted to go that route, but that's more variable. But something that seemed to be reasonable and for the long term and more predictable was a better approach, but you may see otherwise. So with this, the financial impact, it'll be phased over 3 years as commissioners per year that are appointed or reappointed. So we have budget capacity to deal with this. So look forward to your approval of this.
Okay. Any comments or discussion? And if preference on the 3% increase, no increase, or the tying it to the CPI? Okay. Anybody on virtual? Tom, Ezra, or Ken?
I think it makes sense, Tom. The 3% seems a good one to me. It happens automatically. We're not ever voting on our, how big of a raise or whatever. It sort of just has, it has an automatic, scaling up each year. It all sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Wilson. I appreciate the work that's been done for this, and it is about time. The rate was really low, even compared to other governments, local governments especially. So I appreciate it. I'm fine with the 3%. It's probably a rate that's reasonable. I can tell you that I had a contract that was tied to for a base raise that was tied to CPI, and it kind of went up and down, and it was difficult sometimes and this is commission, of course, but I was an employee, but it was a little difficult sometimes for the board members to wrap their arms around why it was only like either 0.5% or 5.5%. So I think just having it at a 3, it makes sense to me. So thank you.
Hi, Tom. Commissioner Clark. That makes sense to me also, and the phasing in makes sense also.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments by anybody in the room? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval. Commissioner Eskridge. I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Eskridge, second by Commissioner Bookland to approve the change in the per diem pay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None, motion carries. Okay. That will take us to the review of proposal to award of contract for municipal financial services. And Todd's going to do that. And the purpose of this is because we have to look at other funding due to the Clean Water Fund loan having been maxed out. So we have to find a financial advisor, basically, to do our own bonds. So we'd be more like acting like one of our owner communities. Okay, Todd?
Yep, that's it. Thank you. Todd Giebert, Capital Planning Manager. That's a great lead-in. That's exactly why we're here today. I should start off by noting that I'm kind of pinch hitting today, the backup to the backup. Ben Nearad is the project manager for this project, and Bill Walker just had his first grandchild on Tuesday. So he's off to Ames, Iowa to visit her. So happy to be here and drawing the short straw, I guess. So yeah, that is what we're here for today. Basically what I want to do is just go over why we need a financial advisor and the process we use to select one. I think everyone is well aware of the DNR's position with the Clean Water Fund. This is right from their website yesterday. This is still the same message that due to the number of applications that they're seeing, they will be unable to fund all the projects, not only for 2024 fiscal year, but probably for 2025 as well. District has used this exclusively for borrowing since the early 90s, and we've never been denied funding. And DNR confirmed that. They've also never turned anybody away. So these are unprecedented times, and so we're going to have to find alternative financing if we want to keep our capital program going, and that seems to be the way we need to do it. So with that in mind, it's looking like general obligation bonds are probably very likely in the near future. And to do that, the first step is hiring a financial advisor. Financial advisor essentially looks at your financial situation, recommends financial strategies for acquiring debt or revenue that results in debt, and then helps you with that bond offering. They do not underwrite it, though. However, that is not that is against the rules in the industry. So with that in mind, in early March, we began developing an RFP. We used 13 criteria that we wanted to see in the proposals across 4 areas, which included knowledge of the firm, experience, their understanding of the project, the costs and insurance requirements, and then finally any regulatory concerns. So that was posted in March of 2024. We received 4 proposals that you see there. I have to say that the proposals were extremely strong. We went through and met our criteria point by point, and they were surprisingly consistent, which means that, to me, this means that they're heavily regulated industry. They really know their stuff. So we would feel comfortable with any of the 4. Ultimately, the team, which consisted of myself, Bill, and Ben, selected PFM, and here's the key factors that we used to make that decision. First off, industry rating. They're rated very highly. They're the #1 firm over the last 29 years on a national level. Just last year alone, they had 648 transactions, $71 billion. So they're a national leader, but not only that, but their focus is on the wastewater industry. 10% of those offerings were in the water and wastewater sector. But be that as it may, that they also demonstrated a very strong local presence. They have offices in Minneapolis and Milwaukee, and their project manager would come from the Milwaukee area, and she was very willing to meet with us in person and guide us through the process, which, not having done this before, that was very appealing to us. Along with that, they also demonstrated a very good training program for us. They offer their clients a week-long training program every year, free of charge, which I'm sure we'll be taking part in. And then another factor that I haven't listed here is references. They also provide services to Green Bay, New Water in Green Bay, and Green Bay is very pleased with their performance so far. As far as the cost, this was a bit of an eye-opener for us. I come from the engineering world where we issued many RFPs, and you scope out the projects, you get back a proposal that has hours of effort and other items, usually results in a not-to-exceed price. That's not what we saw here. Essentially, advisors get compensated when there's a bond offering, nothing till then. So their cost structure is $25,000 per bond offering. For this contract, we're assuming 2 bond offerings this year. I think that's unlikely. We're kind of assuming a very conservative approach. That's where the transactional authority kicks in, is the floor is $50,000. That's why this item is before you today. I should point out other future costs that are not included in this contract. In order to have a bond offering, we will need to get a credit rating, which we currently don't have. And so there's additional costs for that, but those will be down the road. And then there's also some minor administrative fees that are also not included. Last thing I should point out is this is a 3-year agreement. That's pretty standard in this industry from what we understand. Since they're looking at the long term for you, it's best to have them under contract for multiple years. We have an option also to renew it years 4 and 5. Then finally, here's just kind of the next steps, what they'll be working on in the next 3 months. Really kind of gathering information, looking at our budgets, our policies, our future cash flow projections, trying to make sense of out of all that, doing the training that I mentioned before. It all kind of comes down to the last item there, which you see is work with the staff, specify financing needs for this year and next. And that's really the critical piece. So I guess I'd wrap by stressing that this is kind of be working in parallel with our budget development for this year. And the two will need to talk to each other because you're going to have a bond offering, you need a credit rating. That depends on your reserves, your level of debt, and your future revenue stream. So obviously some of that is dictated by our budget. So those two processes will really need to talk together in the coming months. So the requested action today, staff is asking that the Commission adopts Resolution R6, awarding the contract for Municipal Financial Advisor Services to PFM for $50,000. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay, Beth, you got a question?
I just have one question, and that is, when do we think we would pay the $25,000?
So it would be in a bond offering, and it's probably not going to happen until the fourth quarter. I'm guessing at this current pace. I mean, we've moved really fast to this point, but they really need to look at our budgets and our policies. That'd be the soonest, I would say.
Commissioner Havel, you have questions. Commissioner Meyer, then Commissioner Wilson on deck.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer and then Commissioner Wilson. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, and Beth's question fed in a little bit into what I was going to ask. It sounds like we need to shape the capital improvements plan, the budget implications, especially of the capital improvements plan for next calendar year, based on what we learn in working through the strategic sort of financial advice from this firm, because of all those questions about reserves and what bonding might actually cost and all those other things. Is that right? And then that flows into, does the timeline here kind of fit into our standard CIP timeline, or is there any need for tweaks?
Yes, I think that's correct. There's a lot of, I think we'll have to make assumptions at a certain point. We won't know all the facts, because the budget's going to be due in August sometime. So we'll certainly know more in 3 to 4 months, but we won't know everything. So I think there'll have to be assumptions between what we can expect to get from the Clean Water Fund and perhaps from bonding.
Tom?
Just a couple of questions. One is, there's bond counsel fees. Is that going to be something that's separate that we would then pay bond counsel that we might engage with, or is that in the administrative fee part of this? Because that can be somewhat significant too. And then the other thing is I didn't really see anything on, like the other proposals, why we're choosing PFM instead of, for instance, Ellers or Baird, who I'm familiar with. So I was just wondering if you could maybe give us a little discussion on that. Thanks.
Sure. Regarding the bond counsel, that's out of their scope. So those fees would be in addition also, when there's actually a bond offering. For reference, we also pay bond counsel on our clean water funds, and that's typically about $5,000 per loan. So those would be down the road as well. As far as why we selected PFM, I think it came down to in the end about that local presence and the ability to meet in person and guide us through the process would set them apart from the others. But again, they were all excellent proposals.
Okay.
So Tom, if I could follow up.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
So Ellers wasn't willing to come from Milwaukee to Madison to talk to us?
Well, they didn't say that explicitly. I mean, but I guess just in reading the proposal, the way they structured it, we got a better feeling from PFM in that regard.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Sarah?
Maybe less of a question for you, Todd, and more of a question for you, Commissioner Hovell or Michael. So Bill's giving an update on the budget process improvements, it looks like, a study session in our next meeting. I'm hoping we can make kind of, to the degree that, as you spoke to, Todd, like this is going to overlap. Can we make sure that this is part of that conversation with the commission so we have a better sense of how, I mean, I'm sure it will be part of it, but what clean water implications are going to look like in our budget process? Because what you provided was great, Todd, but like, I would love to talk more about it.
Yeah, and Bill can speak better to this than I can, but, you know, there's a series of 3 or 4 budget meetings that we have scheduled over the summer, and this is certainly a topic. I think he had this planned for the August meeting. You know, and at that point, we'll have 3 or 4 months into it, and we'll have a better detail, I guess.
You know, one thing is the uncertainty, because we don't know how much loan money we qualify for this year, right? And we don't know what the situation will, it's even worse for 25 and 26. And so obviously our first goal is to try to get as much clean water fund loan as possible. And then the next goal is to then shift probably to the bond, the public bond offering, which I guess you kind of have with the Clean Water of our own bond offering, and which entails these other costs, you know, the offer from the work of PFM having to get graded. And then I don't know, we've always used the bond council, but of course there may be more work for the bond council now under this type of offering than under a Clean Water Fund loan offering. I don't know, but I think
Yes, there
it's
would
something that we have to try to figure out is how all of this works with the uncertainty that we have, because maybe we do 2 offerings, but maybe we only do 1 offering this year because of what money we get from the Clean Water Fund loan. So we've kind of been put in the real difficult position to try to figure out what projects we move where, and then you add into that the Build Back Better legalities and restrictions on, you know, and as I was telling Forbes and Carolyn Clow when I met with them, is that it's one thing when you're building roads and you source your concrete and asphalt, it's all coming locally. Different thing when you're dealing with the type of equipment we deal with and the metals and things like that are not necessarily made here in the United States, even though you have to have them made here in the United States. And so all of this kind of works into this funnel, right? And you have to try to figure out what projects are best for the public offering and what are best for the Clean Water Fund loan, because it becomes, I think, exceedingly complicated.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we're making those decisions right now. I mean, there's a number of projects that are going out to bid, and you'll see coming before you in the coming months, where we have to assume, are we bidding this with Clean Water Fund requirements, the Build America, Buy America requirements? All those assumptions are being made in kind of in real time right now.
Yeah. So all of that kind of flows into the whole decision. So maybe part of this is, part of me wonders too, and this is maybe a discussion for Bill and Michael, is a while back we looked at trying to self-fund more projects, and we didn't do it because of the rate increases that would be required. But now maybe it's time to revisit that, because we know that our bond offering for the Clean Water Fund loan is a lower interest rate than what we probably will have for a bond offering for the non-Clean Water Fund loans. I don't remember how much that they're underwritten at. Was it 2.25% or 2%? You know,
For Clean Water Fund,
yeah,
it's about 2.1% right now.
yeah, and I'm sure so I mean, there's a lot of things that enter into this. So, you know, we made decisions based on Clean Water Fund loans in the past, and now it's not come up. Now things have changed. Michael?
Excuse me. There is another systemic issue, and that is the availability of funding from the state for these projects. And we meaning the executive directors from Milwaukee, Green Bay, and Madison, met with the Department of Administration and the DNR this week to get the longer-term prognosis on what's happening with this funding and the availability of funding. Is this a short-term issue or a longer-term issue? And it appears it could be longer term, although it's uncertain. One of the things the Department of Administration is putting a request through the budget. The next state biennial budget is a $400 million additional bonding authority request, and we are gaining forces, Madison, Green Bay, and Milwaukee, to lobby the state legislature to approve this bonding authority. It's not new money. It's just bonding authority. And so Vanessa's been plugged in on this. And so we've developed a lobbying strategy that will be laying out through this year. And I'll be able to, if not me, Bill can give you updates on how that's going.
I think, yeah, that's great and super helpful. And my own, like, the reason I brought it up is just periodic updates to the commission like this are so helpful to just know what's going on. And the extent we can, sounds like we're already partnering with other wastewater utilities, but our owners' communities have a vested interest in us finding money as well. Right, we've already started these conversations, and as you alluded to, the conversation you had, Tom, but let's make sure we're including in our owner community updates and stuff, this communication as well.
I will say Forbes and I have had discussions about that.
Okay, anybody else?
Tom, I had one more question. Todd, any idea what the difference in interest rates are?
I knew someone was gonna ask that. We're guessing about 2% probably, somewhere in that range.
So 2% versus 4%?
Correct.
Okay.
That would probably be the high side, but conservatively, that's probably where we'll start.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I had recalled hearing generally that the underwriting for the Clean Water Fund loan was about 2%. It was a 2% decrease, so if it was market 6% is 4%, if the market's 8% it's 6%. But so that kind of confirms that.
Yeah, Clean Water Fund is 55% of market rate.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else? Do we have a motion?
I'd move approval of the resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Murphy to move approval of the resolution for PFM as our bond advisor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Meyer here.
Okay, Beth beat you,
Okay.
Ezra. Okay, motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by Commissioner Bookland to approve PFM as the resolution approving PFM as a bond council. Anything else? If none, all those in favor say aye. Oops, somebody had something?
Oh, go ahead. I was a follow-on thought after we're done voting on it.
Okay.
Tom,
All those in favor say
Tom,
aye.
Tom,
Aye.
can we have a little discussion?
Oh, sure. That's right. Okay, I didn't realize somebody. Go ahead, Tom.
I'm sorry, I didn't get my hand up. You know, that's doing this virtually. Sometimes I'm just a little slow on things. Okay, I don't know that I'm ready to vote on this for a couple reasons. One, you know, and it's just me. It could be just because I have some questions. And sorry, Todd, but I don't think you got to my point about what the difference was, other than coming to Madison. I guess I was a little concerned about what were the cost differences, what were the people involved. I see that Green Bay is using that. That's great, but that's one that you've mentioned for sure here. You know, so I may be a no vote here just because I don't think we've explored this enough. I don't know what the possibility is of, you know, just contacting a bank to see if we can get a loan from bank for the amount that we need. That might cost a little bit more in interest, but will that change in interest be offset by that cost that we'd have to do for bonding? I'm not a financial expert when it comes to these kind of things, that is for certain. I know enough to be dangerous about it, I guess. So those are my concerns. It's just things that, Todd, I guess you could pass on to Bill or whoever before you think about you know, putting this moving so forward so fast with all of this. And I know that you're thinking about it as well, because we don't know what's going to happen with the funding, like Michael just talked about. So anyway, just throwing out some concerns that I have. Other people may not have those concerns, and that's fine. To proceed is probably appropriate. I'm not sure that I'm convinced. So there you go. Sorry for that.
No, I appreciate that, Tom. Todd?
I can address part of that, I think. as far as the private financing through a bank, we did reach out immediately after we learned of this from the DNR and talked to our bond counsel, Thomas Griggs. And he said that was unlikely to get a better rate in his experience going through a bank, that he would recommend working through a general obligation bond. So we did ask him about that back then.
Okay, Tom,
do we have an idea
again, I
how
don't
much-
want to be argumentative, but the rate I know will be higher. It just will be, but it may save some money if the interest that is the difference is offset by what we're paying for $50,000 here, $25,000 here, probably another 20 to 25,000 for bond counsel, plus the internal time. Just it's in my head, just something to think about, and that's why I'm not sure that I'm quite ready.
Okay, the other commissioners share the view that we should delay this for a couple of weeks to see whether or not they can reach out to and see. How much money we don't even know how much money we're really talking about.
No, I mean, it's going to be in the tens of millions, I would guess.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to withdraw the motion and set this aside for a couple weeks to allow staff to, I guess, dig into what would, to Commissioner Wilson's point, would the savings by not hiring the financial advisor, would we actually, what's the likelihood that we're going to come out even or better off if we were to look into the possibility of getting a loan through a bank with a potentially higher interest rate? And you have to, I'm not quite sure how staff's going to do that. But I mean, I'm okay with not dealing with this today, but I'm not quite sure what we're asking staff to do between now and when this would come back. And another point, do other municipalities hire financial advisors? I'm assuming they do for their bonds.
Yes, they have to.
Yeah, when I was in Fitchburg, we worked with Baird and then Ellers. But most recently, when I worked there, it was Ellers.
Okay, but I mean, having said that, I'm happy to set this aside for today. I'm also perfectly willing to move forward and vote on it today, depending on what the other commissioners' preference would be. And I don't really have a concern about hiring this firm. I think they're very well qualified. I think that all the other firms were qualified as well from what you said. And I thought your reasoning for going with this firm was good. I like the fact that they do provide some training for staff, and since we're kind of new to this, I mean, that made sense to me as well. So having said all that, what other commissioners are thinking, but
I have two options. I think what I heard is that we come back and look at the return on investment. The other thing to consider is looking at option 2, which take more of a baby step, which is just allow us to do it once with one transaction, which would be about $25,000, and have our experience with it instead of having a 3-year agreement. And then coming back and reporting and see how it worked. Be another smaller incremental approach we could take.
But wouldn't we have to get our rated so that $50,000 cost will be there too? So you got a high base cost, regardless if you have 1 or 2 issues. I can't remember if they rate every year or what the deal was when it was.
But we can just come back with the return on investment.
Yeah,
and share more with you about about what that is.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay,
To
the
approve
motion's
the
withdrawn.
President
Amanda?
Hubble,
Yeah.
I've got a couple thoughts in answer to Brad's rhetorical or maybe not so rhetorical question about what would we ask staff to come back with if we push this. I was ready to be convinced to go with PFM, but it was unorthodox. I'll use that word, that we didn't have the normal comparison of all the different firms that we normally get in an agenda item of this nature, right? A review of proposals and award. We normally see some of that comparison information on their costs, estimates, and other things. And so that was different. Maybe we can see that sort of standard information next time. And then the other thing that, was a little bit confusing and took some reading between the lines and interpretation here was this notion that we're going to get some substantial scope, some extensive work from these folks in advising us about what our options look like and what they cost and how that has implications for the capital plan and the budget. And we maybe never pay them, right? Or we only ever pay them if we seek their help in issuing a bond. So there's a lot of benefit that can come from working with this firm that we may never pay for. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong on that, Todd, but that's how I'm interpreting it. And so I was ready to go with that, just thinking that would be real value added between now and our budget in the fall, and just helping us through this process right now of evaluating how the next year or two are going to look when there's so much uncertainty around our usual source of financing for capital projects. You see like Brad, ready to go today if we're all lined up that way, but also there's some things I could see as specific concrete information that'd be helpful if we're gonna push this table to come back to it another time and hear maybe from Bill at that time, or Bill and Todd, and really kind of see the whole picture on it, do the piece Michael's talking about that sort of lets us see the whole life cycle kind of cost comparison of some different financing options. I think we're headed the right direction, maybe waiting and doing this again in a couple weeks.
Okay, thanks, Ezra. Ken?
Yeah, to Ezra and Tom's point, I think it would help me as a commissioner and maybe the rest of the commission to see those options compared to each other on some type of spreadsheet or document to help us make the decision on this in the future. And that might even be something that's interesting for the DNR to see, to at least communicate to them what the cost of our funds are going up if we don't have the clean water fund to at our disposal.
Okay, so I'm, Sarah?
Sorry, clarifying question. In option 2 of the options that were presented in the CAR, am I, and maybe this was Ezra's question too, reading correctly, that we could approve the services agreement and you all could get started on this amount of work and kind of understanding of scope of services, get started on training, all of those things without giving the transaction authority? And then my second kind of question, so if that understanding is correct, my question is, would there be negative implications, or what would the consequences be of us pushing the whole decision back 2 weeks in terms of staff process and kind of the information that you were hoping to glean in the next 2 weeks? Like, would that delay cause problems for staff?
Regarding the first question, so the transactional authority, I don't think is a huge point, because I don't think we were going to do two bond offerings. That was really just to get the discussion here at the commission, which I think is a good thing. So yeah, we could amend the agreement, years. I think that's all up for grabs. As far as the second, 2 weeks, obviously we like to get started during the CIP. The further we can get along, the better we can make good decisions. But I don't think 2 weeks is going to really affect things.
Yeah, I guess then my recommendation would be, if we are asking for a 2 week delay, let's be very specific about what information we want from staff in those 2 weeks, because I'm not clear. To Brad's point, I'm very comfortable with your selection of the firm. I don't have any concerns about that. That seems like good staff work, and clearly staff and not commission work to me. So I just want us to be cognizant of what is our job and what is the job of staff. And so if the question is a much more macro question and information that we want around is bonding authority even something we think we want? That question, I think if we don't provide transaction authority, we can keep having conversation about that macro point and let staff go forward with signing this agreement and getting information, if I'm interpreting that correctly. So unless there's a different reason other than discomfort with the firm, I'm not sure what the additional information that we'd need in the next 2 weeks are if we went with option 2 in this car. And if a commissioner can articulate that, I'm comfortable with it. Otherwise, my recommendation is we just go with option 2 and we continue to have the conversation that we're having as a commission around what our financing options for the budget look like, but we not provide the transaction authority so that we can have that macro conversation over time.
Okay, so what I heard are two things. Commissioner Wilson expressed a desire for more information on return on investment from other options, sourcing of funds. And I heard from Commissioner Meyer and Commissioner Clark, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, is they want a better comparison of the firms, more like what we see when we select a firm for engineering. They typically have the cost and some of the breakout of the qualifications. Ken, am I doing that correct? You got your hand up?
Yeah, Tom, to me, the firm choice is, I'm comfortable with that. I am referring back to Tom Wilson's question. It's really the cost of the money. And that's what I don't have in front of me today is, you know, if we could see the clean water cost versus the bond cost versus a bank loan cost. I think that answers Tom Wilson's original question from a fiduciary standpoint.
Okay, so Ezra, you were the one then that had the indication of a better analysis of the firm selection, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. And I was trying to support my friend Tom Wilson in maybe feeling more comfort around how we came to a choice amongst a set of firms. I'm with Sarah and Brad and others who've said it. I feel comfortable to go with this firm and trusting staff on the whole process there. I don't know if there was a reason why it was a little different information set we got in the packet compared to other times, but anyway.
Okay, so we've got basically three options for us. The first option is to go with the staff recommendation, which we had a motion, but the motion's been withdrawn. The second option is to go with option 2 in the report. And I don't have that up. Michael, could you just quickly?
I can. It would be the commission could approve the professional services agreement, but decline to provide related transactional authority. The essence is that staff would have authority to enter a contract for just one, up to $50,000. That's what the nuance or the difference is there. But given what I'm hearing here, we may not even want to do that.
Do that, right? Okay. So really, it comes to approve as is. You could do option 2, or which basically allows staff to do transactional authority up to $50,000. And then option 3 is that staff comes back with the return on investment, kind of a comparison of what a clean water fund loan, a bank loan, and what bonding would be, and also a better reasoning as to why PMF was chosen. Sarah.
Okay. Since I was misinterpreting option 2 then, let me clarify, because in my comments, I was interpreting in option 2 that we would not be giving authority for any transaction, including like an initial $50,000. So it is not possible, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, for us to sign a contract with PFM unless we are committing to at least $50,000. Is that correct? Or the possible, anyway.
No, I think the transactional authority is a secondary point. So if you enter in the contract, we could still do at least one bond offering, again, up to $50,000. I think I would recommend, though, if we're not sure we want to go to municipal advisor, that we wait before we authorize a contract, because then we're getting them under contract and we may go to private financing through a bank. I think just in a good faith wouldn't do that.
Okay, then I would make a motion that we table this item until the next meeting, and at the next meeting, we have more contextual information provided about the macro, as I was calling it, decision around financing options from staff, and understand some of the trade-offs in those options. And I don't need the table about why which firm, but someone could amend my motion to add that if they'd like it.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Estrich, to summarize it, is to have staff provide more source funding option costs for the commission in terms of the transactions that will be required. And she's not including Ezra's idea of wanting better comparison of the firm. So do we have a second?
I'd just like to add to that. I really would like to see a comparison as that. And I'd like to better understand, besides the bond money, are there any other benefits of working with a financial advisor that, you know, we might want to consider?
That's a good point, because some of the other scope I didn't really mention is, you know, they'll review our policies. They'll give you guidance on, you know, the future, you know, how your policies are, your balances, recommendations that way that you wouldn't get through, say, paying financing.
And so I'd like to understand that a little bit when you present the options and benefits for next time.
Sure.
Okay, so that doesn't include a comparison of the firms. We're leaving it basically transactional authority and the benefits of a bond advisor. So do we have a second? So do you accept that? That's accepted into the motion. So do we have a second to the motion?
Then I'll second the motion.
Okay, second by Commissioner Bookland. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're deferring it for 2 weeks for staff to come back with more information on the transactional costs for the different source methods of funding for our projects, as well as the benefits that arise from having a bond counsel doing, assisting with us in the bond work. And so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Ezra?
Yeah, a clarification, and I'm curious, you know, Sarah and Beth as movers and seconders, does that come back including a review of proposals and award of a potential contract to this municipal financial advisor, or is that sort of off the table next time until and unless we decide to direct staff to bring that back at a future meeting after next meeting?
Go ahead.
So by tabling this item, I would expect the same item to come back to us next meeting with additional information. So presumably at the next meeting, we will be ready to make a decision.
That's really helpful. It wasn't super clear before, but I think that's really helpful, and I'm on board with that. Thanks for this clarification,
Okay.
Sarah.
Okay, anyone else?
Commissioner Havel,
Yes?
I would just like to recap what I heard.
Yep.
Okay, so I have that the action requested today is being tabled to the next meeting. And what that means is that you are looking to have additional information on transactional cost and additional information on source methods funding options and the cost of those. And also outlined was the benefits of bond counsel to help and how that could potentially assist staff. I get that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that captures it. Todd?
Well, I don't know if I heard it, but I think we'll provide that breakdown in comparison of the consultants too. I think that's still, the advisors is still desired.
That was not part of the motion.
Oh, it's not part of it? Okay.
No. So as far as we're concerned, we're not asking for any more comparison of firms. We're asking for source funding comparison and the benefits of a bond advisor. Okay. Having worked in a municipality that did bonding and having had to work with the bond authority advisor and council, One thing you do find is when you get rated, you get a lot of information as to what you should be doing or not doing. So that all enters into that rating. Okay, seeing Tom Wilson, you have your hand up.
Of course. Okay, so I am fine with that. That would make me feel a lot more comfortable. I was just trying to raise a point that I had in my brain. If other people were comfortable and moving forward, one no vote is not going to break our back. I am okay because I trust staff in not seeing the comparison based on the conversation that we've had here, or discussion that we've had here. I'm okay with that. It was a concern that I had because I have worked with two of these and two of the consultants that made proposals, and the experience that I've had has always been very good. I have not worked with the one that we've chosen, but I don't have to work with them. That's staff that's got to work with them. So I'm fine with the delaying and the extra information. I know what we're going to find out, but I'd sure like to see it, and I think, as Ken said, it might be helpful down the range to have that little bit. So I'm much more comfortable now, just so y'all know, and thank you very much.
Okay. And I think just to add in this, I had mentioned before, it raises the whole question, depending where our costs go, about are we better off looking at some more self-funding, at least for smaller projects? You know, raising, you know, depending on how, I don't know, Bill Walker probably has in his mind, his spreadsheet, how this can all work. But okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, which was by Commissioner Escher, second by Commissioner Bookland, to have the delay, table this for 2 weeks, and have staff come back with more source funding more source funding options and costs related to comparison of costs, as well as the benefits of a bond advisor to the district. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None, motion carries. Okay. That takes care of that. So
Thank
we
you,
go to
everybody.
item C.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Todd. So that takes us to item C, consider and possible action from the Executive Director Search Subcommittee. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing the subcommittee to meet at 7:30, and then so we can be able to report to you. We don't have any specific action items for the commission at this point, but we do have a report, and I want to just kind of quickly list decisions that have occurred and what's in process. First, in terms of outreach for both the employees, there's a existing process that was starting, and we've teamed onto that process. It involves basically focus groups of selection and of subgroups or randomly selected employees, and there's a questionnaire that they'll be asked. Second is in terms of our owner communities. There's also a process that's going on or just starting, excuse me, that involves focus groups. So there'll be a focus group with them, plus a survey of I think it was all of the customer community, the owner communities, so that we captured the voice of all of the owner communities rather than just those that might be involved in the focus groups. We did today approve a survey for the commission that we ask that it's going to be a little more in depth rather than there'll be like 10, 12 choices, and there's not many questions, 4 questions, but some questions have 12 options, some have 6, but we're going to ask you to rank. So it's going to be a little more work because we're thinking we're going to get better data by being able to, 1 being the highest score, 10, 12, or whatever the number of options in the question are, would be lowest score. And then that will be graded. What staff will do is they will take all of these and compile them. Some information may come in early June, some may be late June, some might be July. We're hoping it'll be done by late June so we can meet on it, but we're not sure. But they'll make a report that of all of them at one point in time that the subcommittee will receive. And then the questions are different, and it's going to pose some challenge to us as how we rate and flow all of this into our qualifications and so forth for the executive director position, or what we're wanting. But the reason they're different is because each group has different needs and desires, right? So that's what's happening in terms of outreach. We've also approved an RF, or made alterations to a draft RFP, request for proposal for a search firm. And Mike Lipsky was going to be redlining that and getting it out to our 4 subcommittee members. And if everybody basically says go with it, he can get it out, and it'll be a public process. We're not doing any limiting firms. We're going to put it out to all 200 whatever firms. If there is one nay on it, then we will meet again. We'll discuss that at our next meeting. So that way it allows it to start sooner than later if everybody, the 4 members are okay with that. In terms of the evaluation of the RFP, there's a question that's going to legal counsel, and the desire is if those meetings of the evaluation of the RFP, which is not, has to be public meetings, then we'll probably go to a subgroup of 2 of the subcommittee members to review, just being transparent and open. If it can be in a closed session, then it would be all 4 of us. But if we can't do closed session, we're just going to go 2. And the reason is we don't want to be compromising or giving benefit, the way, how you select a firm may impact how you select a candidate, right? And so we don't want to give any benefit to one group or another, or potential interested candidate or another in terms of that. So that's our report to date. I will have to say that Mike and I are going to probably touch base. The subcommittee may or may not meet again in 2 weeks, because I think, Mike, most of our work for the next meeting has probably been, the only thing that we would discuss would be the job description. And we've given out a couple thoughts as to what we may want to do with the job description. But we also want to hear from our employees, the owner communities, and the commission might also help that. Two big things that came up with the job description are A, the weighting of how different tasks are weighted, and B, the biggest one is probably, do we want to have a professional engineer or not as a qualification requirement for the position. So those are probably the 2 biggest things to be discussed. We also were thinking that the selected firm may have an idea in terms of input into to what we do. So that's kind of on. Discussions will be ongoing. We'll have to decide whether or not we want to meet in 2 weeks to just discuss that, or wait until we have the more information and so forth from the other aspects. I think I covered everything. Did anybody?
Tom, just
Beth?
Just in terms of timeline, for the whole group, I think we've come around over the last 2 meetings to realizing that we're on a track that's sort of like, and we say this in our draft RFP, seeking the help of a search committee. We're on a track towards an end of the year-ish target for having someone hired. Not any sooner than that. But I think early on we worried about working towards a much sooner timeline than that. But then as we laid all the pieces out, it all starts to fit into a timeline that, lasts much of the calendar year here, if not sort of all of it. But just think it's good to let everybody know that's where we've come around to now that we've really laid out the timeline in a pretty detailed way with the help of Mike and others on staff.
Yeah, I want to say staff's been very helpful, and we've had engaged with a number of staff on this, and they've prepared a number of documents for us to review and look at. from the questionnaires to the RFP, and things like that. So, I think they understand, and our hope is to have somebody, selected by the end of the year. So one thing regarding the commission survey, if we all give the thumbs up when Mike, probably by the end of the probably by early middle of next week, he'll have that red line to us. If we get all thumbs up, then that will be released to the commissioners. So it'll probably be occurring, and he'll give you a few days or a week or whatever to respond. 2 weeks? Okay. So look for that email that will be coming, hopefully next week, if we all give the thumbs up, which I don't foresee any more problems. I think we did a pretty good job of covering all that today. Okay? So that is where we stand with the executive director search. The biggest thing that will be coming up will be our selection of a firm, and because we're opening it up, we could have 60 proposals, we could have 30 proposals, and what's going to happen on that is we're going to have there's going to be a certain section that that staff will review and say, do these firms meet the minimum qualifications? So, for example, we decided on 2021 that they've done a national search since 2021. Have they done that? If they haven't, they throw them out, and a few other things. But that we still might get 50 or 60 that we will have to go through. So that could be a time-consuming process for us. But we'll cross that as it comes to it. Okay? So, thank you for your understanding, and I appreciate the ability to be able to give this report after what we met, and for meeting at 9, because otherwise it'll all wait till next meeting. So, Michael, Executive Director report.
I have one brief report. Every year around this time, we do an annual report. And this is a very labor-intensive effort by staff to develop this report. State Chapter 200 states that sewage districts must produce an annual report. However, it's always been quite vague on what is actually required in that report. The only thing that's required is financial information and an accounting of major changes to facilities and services, and that our annual budget meets all those requirements. Our annual budget actually satisfies that need, not a report, not a separate report. So because producing the annual report requires so much additional labor hours and it's duplicative, we're not going to do an annual report anymore. We're going to submit our budget as the annual report. And for 2023 and beyond, we will use our annual budget document, and it will fulfill the statutory requirement for the annual. Some of our fellow utilities do not submit any reports at all, not even the budgets. But we're going to take it seriously and submit the budget as part and satisfy that Chapter 200 requirement moving forward. Does not.
Okay, everybody understand that? Okay, thanks, Michael. Lisa, you're going to give a capital project update?
Do I have to hit this? Turn it on? Okay. Great. Thank you. Should I pause and wait for the other commissioners to return? Give them a moment? No? Go ahead? All right. All right. Sounds good. Yes, I know. I've had a lot of coffee myself, so I get it. All right. So good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Coleman. I'm the Director of Engineering. And I'm happy to be here today to give you an update on some of our capital projects. Promise I won't talk as long as the last time I did one of these. It had been a long time since somebody had done one at that last one, so there was a little bit of catch up to do. So my plan here going forward is to do these a little bit more frequently, say 3 or 4 times a year, and keep it a little bit briefer. So Okay, hopefully won't keep you here too long today. All right. So today, I want to give just a few updates. I'm going to give you an update on some projects that we're currently bidding. And then I'm going to give you an update on one of our larger projects that's in design, which is liquid processing phase 2. And then I'll give you a quick construction update. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about sort of coming attractions. So things that you'll see coming to the commission in the next couple of months. So I used to work at a movie theater, so I can't resist talking about coming attractions. All right. All right, bidding update. So I'm happy to report that as of today, we've got 3 capital projects out on the street for bidding, and we will have another one out shortly. So among the projects we have are, there's 2 pipeline projects that are related to capacity. One of those is along the University Avenue corridor, which is the West Interceptor, and that's the 3rd phase of a project that we've been continuing to work on over several years here. And so that's the last piece of it. And then the second pipeline project is in Wanakee, the Northeast Interceptor. So that's a capacity improvement project that's up near kind of 113 area in Wanakee. So the 3rd project here on the list is a project here at the plant. It's a critical project that to upgrade the electrical service that basically supplies the entire plant. So that's out on the street currently. And then lastly, by the end of the month, we're going to have this 4th project out for bid, which is the flow splitter improvements. So the flow splitter, that one is always a mouthful, is the critical structure here at the plant that is just downstream of the headworks facility, and it basically allows us to split flow between the east part of the plant and the west part of the plant to balance out what part of the plant we're using. And that structure is in need of rehabilitation. So it's a fairly significant undertaking to do that, because pretty much all the flow that comes into the plant needs to go through that structure. So that should be out towards the end of the month, out on the street for bidding. So lots going on. We've been very busy. Yeah.
When is the West University Avenue project scheduled to be completed?
I told you last spring when you asked. So you're talking about the DOT?
Just a personal interest.
Yeah, you're talking about the DOT's chunk of it that they're working on. So that's the DOT job that's happening right now.
Right.
They were supposed to be done already. They have been having some problems, and I don't know that. I don't want to speak out of turn, so I'm not sure when they're slated to be done.
Okay.
But
What's the 2 ends of our project?
So our project will get built in 2 pieces. So there's one piece that's near the right near the Shorewood Pool.
Okay.
So that's one piece of. So the two like last chunks of pipe that we need to do are one by the Shorewood Pool, and that'll get started later this year. Waiting until after the All City Swim Meet is at the Shorewood Pool this year. So waiting until that is done to basically get started over there to be a little bit less disruptive. And then the other piece of the work is more along Campus Drive, the on-ramp and off-ramp to Highland from Campus Drive.
Walnut?
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
over in that area. So that part is not going to happen until next year, because there's a lot of traffic control coordination that needs to occur with that, with having to close the northbound lanes on Highland, or actually the southbound lanes. The northbound lanes will stay open, but having to close lanes on Highland with a hospital there and all the traffic issues with the hospital in UW, that we're not going to do until next summer, because we're going to try to squeeze it into a shorter window during the summer when the students.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Okay. So on to an update on one of our larger projects that's in design right now, which is liquid processing phase 2. So you might recall when I spoke to you last fall, we were looking at 5 options for B&R. And I apologize, there's always lots of acronyms with wastewater treatment, so I'll try to define those as I go to the best I can here. So we were looking at 5 options for B&R, which is the biological nutrient removal part of the process that we have here at the plant. So that's sort of like simply kind of, in a nutshell, that's kind of what happens in those tanks in red that are shown on the slide, where you see, the aeration happening in the tanks. That's essentially the biological process that takes the nutrients, out of the water stream. So one of our objectives is to try to run that process with lower DO, or dissolved oxygen. When we talk about DO, we're talking about dissolved oxygen. And so trying to essentially do a little less aeration to save on power costs. And you might remember when we talked before, or have heard, from previous presentations, that running at low DO is kind of a new thing. It's a little bit of a new thing in the industry. So there's some unknowns with it, mainly with regard to how well the sludge settles out. So we've been working with Strand and Brown and Caldwell on the project, and after a lot of analysis, we've essentially narrowed it down to 2 options. One of those options is modified UCT, University of Cape Town. That's what UCT stands for. That's our current process that we already run here at the plant. Or the other option is AO, which is anaerobic oxic. So there's a couple schematics on the slide here of those 2 processes, which I'm not going to go through. But essentially, they're the same. They have the same aeration tankage, but there's different things happening in the tank. How I would best explain it. So different things are happening in various zones of the tank, like where is the return activated sludge coming, where is aeration happening, where is it not happening, baffles, that kind of thing. There's kind of different things happening in the tanks. So, and what we found between these 2 options, between the modified UCT option and the AO process option, it's not really a clear-cut choice. And we're seeing that one thing we're seeing is that our current process, which is the modified UCT process, is a solid and robust choice. And it would have, we're designing out to 2050 for the project. So it would have the highest system capacity and the lowest capital cost. And we think even with that option, we think we could reduce energy a little bit by basically just turning down the blowers a little bit. So it's a good option. It's a solid option. However, if we were to switch to the AO process, there's a potential to save even more energy and possibly also reduce our nitrogen concentration in our effluent. However, the catch is that the capital cost for that option is about 30% higher. So that's of course challenging. So that said, both of the options are expected to have a similar net present value, assuming that the operation in low DO is successful. So net present value, just not to get too far into the weeds, but it's basically looking at accounting for both the capital cost and the operations and maintenance cost over time. So basically saying how much money do you need right now to, finance the capital cost and also run the plant for 20 years. So we think they'd have fairly similar net present values, but the one option would have a higher capital cost. So what are we doing now? Well, what we're looking at now is actually trying to do sort of a hybrid approach between those 2 options, and that would involve trying to do some simplifications to the piping and the valving and the flow meters and some of those things to try to save some of that capital cost. And it would the goal would be to set us up to run the system in AO configuration when we're running low DO and modified UCT if we're running high DO. That would allow us to have more operational flexibility and possibly realize more of the low DO benefits if running in low DO works well. So that option, that hybrid, we're calling it the hybrid. If we were to do that hybrid option, it would still have an increased capital cost, but it would be less of an increased capital cost, I guess is the way to explain it. So, and there could actually be lower net present value because of the savings with potential lower energy costs. So we're looking at that option in more detail. That's kind of where we're sitting at this point. So we have, however, I guess, so stay tuned on our process choice there. But we have, however, been able to make one important decision, which is we had planned on doing a pilot plan as part of the project to kind of test drive the process, and we're confident that we don't need to do that step at this point. So we're confident that we can move forward and not do that step, which is going to save us some money and some time. All right.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I like the anaerobic, the anaerobic approach, because it seems to me that in our overall objective around climate change and everything, that is a good choice for us. So as we go through this, could we better understand how that might fit into our overall goals of reducing use of, fossil fuels and electricity and all of that?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at that as we evaluate these options. So we're looking at, for each of these options, they're figuring out how much power savings there are, how much, what might be the implication there on greenhouse gas, that kind of thing. We're looking at that as we evaluate these options, for sure. I think it's important to point out that no matter what we do, this is an infrastructure replacement project, right? And we're not just doing this to change the process. We're doing it because stuff is getting old and we have to. So no matter what we do, it's going to be better. Even if we do the exact same process that we currently do, it's going to be more efficient and less, energy intensive than it currently is. So we really, there's things that we can do that are differently, but no matter what we do, it's going to be better, I guess, is the takeaway.
So what I'd like to understand is how it will be better. So if we could do like an energy analysis, or you could kind of present to us the next time, like what the energy savings might be for those. I just think that'd be helpful.
I have that information, some of it now. I mean, I can share a little bit here from our, our preliminary engineering. So, for example, our current process, if we ran it in modified UCT with existing DO, we use about 19,100 megawatt hours per year. That's with the current. If we use the current process and kind of turn down the air a little bit, like I was mentioning, that's 18,000 megawatt hours per year. I got to make sure I get my unit right there. Megawatt hours per year. So, that's a reduction. That's a fairly good reduction. If we were to be successful in running the AO process and low DO, those numbers are more like 14,800 megawatt hours per year. So it's a decent reduction. Yeah, it's a decent reduction. So we are accounting for that, and that's part of when you look at that net present value. All that, figuring out paying for all that power during the time frame is all kind of rolled into those net present value costs. Yeah. Yep. All right. I'm glad I brought my handy dandy table here. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So another, make sure I got the right slide up here. Another decision we've been able to make on the project so far is working on the kind of diffusers that we're planning to use. So diffusers are essentially how do you make the bubbles, right? So that how do we deliver the oxygen to the tanks? We currently use ceramic disc diffusers, which are kind of the thing on the lower left. It looks almost like a stone. It has fine pores that the bubbles come through. For the new diffusers, we're planning to use silicone tube diffusers, which are a new kind of technology. And they look like the slide on the top left, which is that those aren't our tanks, those are somebody else's tanks, but without the water in there, so you can see kind of what they look like. So they're essentially a silicone membrane that's a sleeve that's mounted on a rigid support. And we've also selected, so using those diffusers, we've also selected what they're calling the low energy configuration, which is essentially, instead of having, it's essentially having more diffusers that each supply less oxygen versus having less diffusers that each supply more oxygen. So, so this kind of diffuser and the low energy configuration has lower construction costs than replacing with our current type. And it also has the lowest net present value of the options that we considered. And so we think it's a good option. And so it's a good one thing we can check off and keep moving along on the design. So overall in the project, like I said, we're still working on the, which DNR process to use. We're also, next steps are, another big one is selecting the blowers. So that's going to have, that's a interesting selection process as well. And then there's lots of other kind of smaller pieces with the project that all need to kind of come together in the preliminary design. So we expect to have the preliminary design report complete, fourth quarter of this year. All right. On to a brief construction update, and sorry, I can't resist but provide some cool construction pictures when we do a construction update. So the pictures here are from the Pump Station 17 Force Main Relief Phase 2 project, which is just south of 151 in the Verona area. So this is basically completing the relief force main that we're building for Pump Station 17. And as part of the project, we used trenchless technology to go under 151 and also Highway PD. So the picture you see on the left is basically what they used in this case was called microtunneling. And the cutting head on the left is basically goes at the front of the casing pipe that is advanced below the roadways. So you can see the teeth on that, kind of cool looking. And on the right, you can see the blue pipe is the force main that's getting inserted into the casing pipe once the casing pipe is through. And you can see the silver thing in the picture that's around the blue pipe. That's a spacer that kind of aligns the force main in the correct location inside of that carrier pipe. So very interesting process. The project engineer that's working on the project, Theron Jacobson, wrote a nice article in the Clarifier about trenchless technology if you're interested. So I encourage you to check that out. So got another picture here from the same project. This is installing a doghouse, what we call a doghouse manhole. So you might guess why we call it a doghouse manhole. Looks a little bit like a doghouse, but what's going on here in this picture is the concrete pipe across the bottom of the picture is our existing interceptor that runs just on the south side of, basically on the south side of Verona Road, right by kind of in the Goose Lake area. And so this is where the force main is going to tie into that interceptor. And so the way you build these kind of a doghouse structure is you can keep the existing pipe in service while you essentially build the new manhole around it. So the doghouse gets lowered there over the existing pipe, and then the new pipe to the left is where the new pipe gets hooked on, and so you can build the manhole and get it all ready to go, and then you can cut out inside the manhole, you can cut out the existing pipe to make it. So that's what's going on in that picture. All right. Another project that we have currently under construction that's nearly complete is Lower Badger Mill Creek Phase 5 interceptor. So this is just north of PD in the right on the edge of City of Verona, Town of Verona area between Highway PD and Shady Oak Drive. So all the pipe is now complete on the project, and really what's left is just restoration and then coating the manholes. So in the picture here, you can see the manholes sticking up, and the reason this picture is looking towards the south, so you can see the cranes for Epic are in the distance. That's what you see down there. And then the project goes through a Viridian housing development, and so some of the houses are already up. So when we started the project, no houses, and woo, now all of a sudden there's houses. So they're not wasting any time building houses out there. So but the manholes are sticking up. They're not going to stick up forever. Once as the housing development continues and their grading operations continue, they'll fill those in, so they'll be at grade eventually, and then those manholes will be basically in along a bike path line. So it'll be a nice location for us. All right, and then last couple construction pictures that I'll show here are a couple of our pump station projects that are under construction. So the one on the left is looking down into the dry well at Pump Station 17. And then the one on the right is Pumping Station 4, which is right across the street from the Align Energy Center on John Nolan Drive. And you can see the blue at Pump Station 4, those blue things are bypass pumps. So over the winter, we did some work in the wet well, and so we had to bypass pump around the station, basically. So that's what those blue pumps are right there. So I guess for the pump station projects, what I'll report is that unfortunately, we're not seeing an end yet to supply chain problems that we've had for the last few years. So we're still seeing long lead times for equipment. Pump Station 4 started last year, and it's finally really getting cracking now because of equipment delays. We're finally starting to get some of that major equipment in. Pump Station 17 is just getting started as well. We bid that earlier this year, accepted bids, and have been contracting and doing submittals and all that stuff. So they're just getting underway with construction on Pump Station 17. But we just recently heard that the delivery time for the motor control center, which is a critical electrical component, is the delivery time they're citing now is 68 weeks. So that's a long time. So, so I guess the upshot there is the, supply chain stuff is still happening, and, these projects that include major electrical equipment in particular are just taking longer to get done. So. All right, on to coming attractions. So just a couple things that you'll see coming up with regard to capital projects. So as I mentioned, we've got a lot of projects out on the street for bid. So you'll see lots of bid acceptance coming up in the next couple of months here. So that's exciting. We always like the beginning of a project is always exciting. And then we'll see, hopefully in the next month or so, we'll hopefully begin a real estate acquisition project for the last leg of pipe in the Lower Badger Mill Creek interceptor. So that's phase 6. So that's the last piece of pipe to get up to the Midtown pump station. So that does go through some private property. So we're going to have to work on property acquisition for that. So this relocation order, now we've done a few of those, and you've sort of seen how that works. So that kind of kicks off the process for beginning real estate acquisition.
So are we going to be seeing a little bit more about that project and the acquisitions start to occur? Is there, are we scheduled to, are there any, we need to make any additional decisions related to that section of the Badger Mill Creek interceptor at this point?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's the alignment is pretty well set because we've come from the north and the pump station's here, so we got to go through the low ground. So
we know where we're going.
We know where we're going, and we know what we got to buy.
And it's knowing what I know about that area, that's going to be a very challenging.
It will be challenging.
Route.
We're trying to do our best to, keep people advised of the process. We're going to be sending all those property owners a letter in advance of the meeting, just to let them know, hey, this is getting taken up. Approving the relocation order is a bit of a formality. It really just kicks off the process for the eminent domain process. So there's not other than approving the relocation order, there's not a lot of action, but we want to be really transparent with people about that process, what it looks like, how it's happening, just so that, they feel like they're informed at least with what that process looks like.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, and then last thing that will be coming up in the next couple of months is we'll be bidding another project, hopefully later in the summer, which is a lining project on the southeast interceptor, which is over in the McFarland area. So there'll be an ongoing DOT project over there on Highway 51. And so in conjunction with that project, there's a couple different phases of work, but lining part of that pipe and those manholes will be one of the initial phases. So we hope to get that out to bid later this summer. With that is the update that I have today. Here's a nice picture from Lower Badger Mill of some of our bovine neighbors having a nice view of the construction project.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Anybody have any questions? I've got just one kind of comment. When you had your first slide with those 4 projects, so talking with Todd and Eric, that's about $38 million. So that's money that will have to be obtained somehow through either a loan from a bank, bonding, or something else. But in the meantime, we'll fund it through our cash reserve. So that's why we have a kind of that high cash reserve. You always remember Jeff Brocktrop talking about how important that having that pot of money to flow, if money flows in and out of it. So in this case, it'll be $38 million flowing out of it, depending on when the bonding or loan or whatever occurs. So I just wanted, it's a good reason why we have our cash reserves and ties everything together. Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
That will take us to Vanessa, regulatory, legal.
Morning, everyone. There was a regulatory review, thank you. Regulatory review included in your packet. I just wanted to note 2 updates to that regulatory review since it was completed earlier this week. So on Senate Bill 312, Assembly Bill 312, which was that PFAS bill that got vetoed by the governor's office, there was a veto override vote in the Senate that passed. So the Senate overrode the governor's veto on that bill. However, it now goes on to the Assembly, and the Assembly would also have to override it by a 2/3 vote. And it is likely that this would come down on party lines, and they wouldn't have the votes to do that. So I think this is not going anywhere, but just to keep you posted on where we're sitting with that bill. And then one other update I wanted to make. So under the guidance document section of this regulatory review, we noted that DNR is working on a disinfection guidance. That did just get public notice for comment yesterday, I believe. So that'll be out for public comment. I'm not anticipating it would affect the district all that much because the district already has some pretty substantial disinfection requirements in its permit. So unlikely that those would change based on this guidance. But just so you know, that's a new guidance out.
You got a question. So when they talk about disinfection, is it the level of disinfection, you know, like taking out so many E. coli pathogens or whatever, or is it the time frame or both?
Yeah, good question. It is not about standards for bacteria standards. Those stay the same as what's in the rule. The guidance is, it's trying to provide guidance to staff on how long the disinfection season
So basically
should be.
trying to see if other communities should be following what they imposed on us.
Yeah, essentially. And there's elements of the guidance too that correct how DNR had been interpreting who needs to disinfect. So there's some communities that aren't required to disinfect, and there's some questions about how the rules should be implemented to determine when it's required at all. Yeah, so length of season and when it's required.
Okay, so not everybody's necessarily treated equally. There's variations based on the water outfall.
The discharge location, yes,
Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, any questions?
Anybody else? Okay, thanks. I gotta get back to the agenda. That takes us to future meeting schedule. So if we don't have our subcommittee meeting, then I suppose we could be meeting at 8 a.m., right? So Mike will have, contact about that. So let's just kind of give you a heads up. There's no closed session. I don't know what that was on for. Or is that just a placeholder? Okay. And then future agenda topics, other business, seeing none, adjournment.
I move we adjourn. Wilson.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by
Clark, second.
Commissioner Clark to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.